What if the actual reason he's so crazy about you has nothing to do with what you look like, how fun you are, or how well you two get along? Because here's what most women get completely wrong about this. They think a man falls madly in love because everything just clicks. Because she's attractive, because the chemistry is there, because they laugh a lot and enjoy each other's company. And yeah, those things matter at the beginning. Nobody's saying they don't. But that's not what makes a man go from liking you to being genuinely, deeply, almost irrationally in love with you. That's not what makes him the kind of in love where he looks at you across a normal Tuesday evening and feels something he can't quite put into words, where he can't picture going back to life before you were in it, where he doesn't even want to try. And here's the part that's going to surprise you the most. Most women who have that kind of love right now still don't fully see it. They're sitting in a real relationship with a man who is completely gone for them, and they still have that quiet little voice in the back of their head, the one that asks, but does he really? Like actually really? Or is he just comfortable? Is he just used to me being around? Is he here because he genuinely wants to be, or because leaving feels like more effort than staying? And that voice just sits there, even when things are good, even when nothing is actually wrong. It just quietly keeps asking. And I want to say something about that voice before we go any further. It's not you being paranoid. It's not you being insecure for no reason. It's what naturally happens when you care deeply about something and you don't have a clear way to actually read it. You're trying to figure out if what you have is real and deep and lasting. And nobody ever gave you the tools to do that properly. You were told to be yourself. You were told to be supportive and fun and not too much. But nobody ever actually told you what specifically makes a man go from caring about a woman to being completely crazy about her. What builds that? What creates that deep, almost irrational feeling in him where she's just different, where every other option stops making sense? That's exactly what this is about. There are 5 specific reasons a man ends up madly in love. Not just happy with you, not just used to you, not just comfortable in a relationship that works, madly in love with you. The kind where you get under his skin in the best possible way and stay there. The kind where he would genuinely do almost anything for you without even thinking about it. And when you understand these 5 reasons, when you actually see them, 2 things happen at once. You stop questioning whether what you have is real, and you start understanding, maybe for the very first time, exactly why he feels the way he feels about you specifically. Not women in general, you. Before we go any further, hit like right now if you've ever been with someone who seemed genuinely into you, but you still couldn't fully shake the feeling that maybe it wasn't as deep as it looked. That feeling is exactly what today is going to fix. So before we get into the 5 reasons, let's talk about what most women actually look at when they're trying to figure out if a man is really in love with them. Because most of what women pay attention to honestly doesn't tell you what you think it tells you. The first thing women look at is how much he says it. How often he tells her he loves her, how much he compliments her, how often he puts his feelings into actual words out loud. And look, it's nice when a man does that. Really nice. Nobody is saying those words don't matter at all. But saying something and feeling it at that deep, almost overwhelming level are 2 completely different things. Some men say it easily and feel it lightly. Some men say all the right things and mean very little of it. Words are easy to produce. They don't show you what's actually going on underneath. Then women look at how much time he gives her, how often he wants to see her, how much of his week naturally includes her, whether he's making her a priority or fitting her in around everything else. And again, time matters. But time by itself doesn't give you the full picture either. A man can spend a lot of time with a woman out of habit, out of comfort, out of not wanting to deal with the awkwardness of things ending. That's not the same thing as being madly in love. You can share a huge amount of your life with someone and still not have that deep thing underneath, that irrational thing that makes her feel like the only person in the world to him. Then there's how he acts around other people. Does he talk about her? Does he show her off? Does he make it obvious to the people in his life that she's his? And sure, that stuff is a good sign. But some men are just naturally private. They don't post about their relationship or make big public declarations, and they're still completely gone for the woman they're with. And some men do all of that, and the love isn't nearly as deep as it looks. So that doesn't really tell you much either. Here's what all of this comes down to. Most women are looking at the stuff on the surface, the stuff that's visible and easy to measure. And what actually creates that madly in love level of feeling in a man goes so much deeper than any of that. It's not about how often he texts. It's not about how many nice things he says or how much time he gives. It comes down to 5 specific things. 5 reasons that build that kind of love in a man. The deep, real, stays with you kind. And when all 5 of these are there, a man doesn't just love you. He's completely gone for you. So here's the first one. The first reason a man is madly in love with you is that you made him feel something he genuinely did not see coming. And I need you to really sit with what that means, because most relationships start in a pretty predictable way. He's attracted, she's interested, things develop, it's enjoyable, it goes the way these things usually go. But then there's a different kind of relationship. The kind where at some point along the way, he felt something he wasn't ready for. Something that caught him completely off guard before he had time to protect himself from it. Maybe it was something you said in a conversation that stuck with him for days afterward, and he couldn't figure out why. Maybe it was a moment where you showed him a side of yourself that was completely real and unguarded, and he didn't expect it. Maybe it was just an ordinary moment. Nothing dramatic, nothing planned, and something about being around you just hit him in a way he couldn't explain or shake off. That moment is what separates a relationship he's comfortable in from one he's completely caught up in. Because when something gets to you emotionally before your guard is up, it doesn't just sit in your head. It sits somewhere deeper than that. It becomes part of how you feel about a person. And a man who felt something like that with you carries it around. It becomes part of why you feel different to him than anyone else he's been with. Part of why he thinks about you the way he does. And here's the thing most women miss about this completely. You probably didn't do anything big or dramatic to create that moment. You probably weren't trying to impress him or make him feel a specific way. You were just being you, naturally, honestly, without thinking about how it was landing. And that's precisely what got him. Because men feel the difference between someone who's performing and someone who's just actually being real. And when he got the real version of you, without the filter, without the careful presentation, something in him responded to it in a way he didn't plan for and couldn't fully control. That's where it all started. And that's the first reason he's madly in love with you. The second reason is that you gave him somewhere he could actually be himself. And this one is bigger than most people ever talk about. Because here's something that's genuinely true about men that doesn't get said enough. Most men spend a huge portion of their everyday life managing how they come across. With their friends, with co-workers, with family, there's always some version of themselves they're putting forward. Always something being held back. Always a part of them that doesn't fully come out because it just doesn't feel safe to let it. Not because anything terrible would happen, just because that's how most men have learned to move through the world. Keep certain things inside. Don't show too much. Stay in control of how you're being seen. And then they meet a woman where that stops, where they can actually say what they're thinking without editing it first, where they can admit when something is hard without feeling weak for it, where they can be quiet and not have it mean something is wrong, where they can show up not at their best and not feel judged for it. And when a man finds that with a woman, when he actually realizes that with her, he can just be himself without managing anything, it does something to him because that feeling is genuinely rare. Most men don't find it even with people they've known their whole lives. So when he found it with you, when he realized he could breathe around you, that you weren't going to think less of him for being a normal human being with doubts and bad days and imperfections, that safety became something he didn't want to give up. And love grew right around that feeling. Because you can't be madly in love with someone you have to perform for. Real deep love lives in the places where you feel completely known and still completely accepted. You gave him that. And that's the second reason. The third reason a man is madly in love with you is that you didn't need him to be. You came into his life as someone who already had things going on. Your own direction, your own sense of who you were, your own life that was already full in its own way. And you wanted him, genuinely, clearly wanted him. But you didn't need him the way someone needs something they can't survive without. You chose him. And those two things are completely different. And men feel that difference even when they can't put words to it. Because here's what actually happens when a woman needs a man in that deep, fill me up kind of way. It creates pressure. It puts a weight on the relationship that makes everything feel heavier and more fragile than it should. He starts to feel like her happiness is entirely his responsibility. Like if he has a bad week or isn't fully available, something is going to fall apart. And that weight, even when he loves her, starts to feel like too much over time. It slowly changes how the relationship feels to him, even if nothing dramatic is happening. But when a woman has her own life, her own goals, her own friendships, her own things that light her up, that have nothing to do with him, and she lets him into that life because she wants to, not because she has to, something completely different happens. He feels chosen. Genuinely chosen by someone who had options, by someone who didn't have to pick him, but did anyway, every single day, simply because he's who she actually wants. And being chosen like that by a woman he respects, who has a full life of her own, means something completely different than being needed by someone who doesn't have anywhere else to turn. That's what you gave him. You kept choosing him, not out of fear, not out of habit, not because being alone felt too scary, because he's genuinely who you want. And a man who feels that, who feels truly chosen by a woman he admires, that's where madly in love starts living, because he knows it's real. He knows it's actually him she wants, and not just the idea of not being alone. And that changes everything about how he feels. The fourth reason he's madly in love with you is that you showed up for him in a moment that actually mattered. Not a fun moment, not an easy, good times kind of moment, a real one. One where things weren't going well for him. where something was heavy or hard or frustrating, and maybe he wasn't being his best or easiest self, and you didn't pull away because the energy was off. You didn't disappear because it wasn't fun anymore. You just stayed. You were there in whatever way you could be. And without making a big deal out of it, you made it clear through how you acted that you weren't going anywhere just because things got harder for a minute. And that moment, even if he never said much about it directly, meant more to him than almost anything else. Because men don't usually talk about stuff like that out loud, but they feel it, they remember it, and it changes how they see a woman in a permanent kind of way. Because anyone can be good company when things are light and easy and fun. Genuinely anyone. The thing that builds deep, lasting love is who's still there when it's not. Who shows up when there's nothing fun about it, when there's no reason to be there except that they actually care. You were that person for him. You showed him something real about who you are, something that he couldn't have seen in any other kind of moment. And that became part of why you feel different to him than anyone else, because he knows what you're like when things aren't easy. And he knows you're still there. That kind of thing goes so deep, it becomes the foundation everything else sits on. That's the fourth reason. And now the fifth reason. This one is the one that holds all the others together. The fifth reason a man is madly in love with you is that you stayed yourself as things got more serious. You didn't quietly disappear into the relationship. You didn't slowly become a version of yourself that was carefully shaped around what you thought he wanted or what would keep things smooth between you. You kept being you. Your opinions, your reactions, the things you care about, the things that bother you, your sense of humor, your bad days, your strong feelings about things, all of it stayed. You didn't shrink yourself down to make it easier. You didn't stop having needs or boundaries because you were scared it might push him away. And here's why that matters more than almost anything else on this list. Because in a lot of relationships, what happens is this. Things start out genuine. Both people are being real. And then somewhere along the way, she starts really caring and gets scared of losing it. And she starts editing herself. She stops saying certain things. She starts picking what she shows him based on what she thinks he can handle or what he wants to see. She gets quieter about the things she actually thinks. And slowly, without anyone deciding for it to happen, the real version of her starts to fade out of the picture. And the man feels it. Not always in a way he can name or explain, but the energy shifts. Something that was there before isn't quite there in the same way. And the connection starts to feel a little flat, even if everything looks fine on the outside, because he fell for the real her. And the real her started showing up less. But you didn't do that. You stayed. You kept bringing the actual you into things, even when it felt a little risky. Even when it would have been easier to just let certain things go and not say the thing you were actually thinking. And because of that, what he fell in love with is still right here. He's not in love with a version of you that you put together for him. He's in love with a real, whole, actual person, with you as you actually are. And that is the hardest thing in the world to find and the most important thing to hold on to. Because a man who loves the real version of you isn't going to wake up one day feeling like he doesn't know who you are. He knows exactly who you are, and he loves her. That's what keeps this kind of love alive long after the early excitement fades. Now, here's what's important to understand after all of this. Knowing these 5 reasons isn't just about feeling reassured in this moment. It's about understanding what actually matters and what actually keeps something this real going strong over time. Because a lot of women who recognize their relationship in everything we just talked about still make a few really quiet mistakes that slowly chip away at the exact things that made him fall so hard in the first place. The first mistake is starting to perform once she knows he's completely in love. She was natural before, unfiltered, real. And now that she knows he's all in, she becomes more careful, more aware of how she's coming across, more calculated about what she shows him. And that naturalness, that specific thing that got to him, starts to fade without her even noticing it happening. The second mistake is making his love her main source of feeling okay about herself. She starts needing his reassurance on a regular basis just to feel settled, needing him to say it and show it and prove it constantly. And that puts a really heavy weight on the relationship because his love is real, but no person can be another person's entire source of feeling good about themselves. That has to come from the inside. And when she's leaning on him for all of that, it creates a pressure that quietly wears on even the strongest relationships over time. The third mistake is using the things he opened up to her about against him when things get hard. He trusted her with the real parts of himself, the vulnerable stuff, the things he doesn't show most people. And sometimes in moments of frustration, she reaches for exactly those things, uses what he shared in his most honest moments as a way to hurt him during a fight. And that breaks something that's genuinely hard to fully fix because he trusted her with that. And now that safety is gone. And a man who doesn't feel safe slowly closes back up. And the closeness that made this love so real starts to quietly disappear. The fourth mistake is letting her own life fade out because the relationship became everything. She was whole when he met her. She had her own things, her own world, and love has a way of slowly pulling all of that into the center until the relationship is all there is. She stops seeing her friends as much. Her own goals and interests take a back seat. And without meaning to, she becomes less of the full person he fell for. Not because she changed who she is, just because she stopped feeding the parts of herself that made her alive and interesting and whole. The fifth mistake is not letting herself fully receive the love that's right there in front of her. He's showing up. He's choosing her. He's doing all the things that show her she matters deeply to him. And she's still holding back a little, still not fully letting it land, still half waiting for it to fall apart because things that feel this good have fallen apart before. And that small distance she keeps, that not quite fully open thing, he feels it too. It's genuinely hard to keep giving in to something that won't fully open up to receive it. And slowly, without either of them planning it, she creates the exact distance she was most afraid of. None of this is meant to give you things to worry about or a checklist to stress over. It's to help you see what's actually there and protect it. Because if you heard yourself in those 5 reasons, if you recognized your relationship in any of what we talked about today, then what you have is real. What he feels is real. And understanding what built it and what keeps it strong gives you something genuinely valuable. It gives you the settled kind of clarity, not the anxious, watching everything kind, the kind where you just know. You don't have to lie awake wondering if he's really in love with you or just comfortable. You don't have to replay his words trying to find proof. You just look at what's actually there. He felt something he didn't see coming. He found a place where he could actually be himself. He felt chosen by someone who didn't have to choose him. He saw who you are when things got hard. And you stayed real with him even when it would have been easier not to. That's not comfort. That's not habit. That's not two people who just ended up together. That's a man who is genuinely, deeply, madly in love with you. And now you know exactly why. If this helped you see things more clearly, tap like. It genuinely helps other women find this. Subscribe and turn on notifications because there's so much more coming that's going to keep helping you understand what's real. And drop a comment below. Tell me which of those 5 reasons felt most true for your relationship. I read every single one and I really want to know. You are worth being loved like this. And now you actually know what it looks like when you are.